Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee and Communications. I'm your host, Mark Johnson, and today I'm delighted to welcome Christina Lee with us. Hello, Christina.
Hello, Mark. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm very well, thank you. So, Christina is the founder and CEO of GGC, Global Green Connect. And rather than me, and also one thing I should say, she is an oracle of all things sustainability. So I've bigged her up. So rather than me give a spiel this week about what her company does, could you just give us a very brief synopsis about Global Green Connect?
Sure. Well, as you may know that I spent 17 years with international media. So I left the media scene 7, 8 years ago to first start our social enterprise called GGF. It stands for Global Green Economic Forum. Because I'm a media girl, so I can only run events, when I came out. But my passion is sustainability. I just believe that something has to change, especially in business, because we inherit quite a lot of environmental and to a certain extent social challenges as well. So Global Green Connect is a product or a brand that evolved, over time, that we are focusing on providing companies with sustainability business and marketing brand strategies.
Perfect. There's so much more to Christina's story anyway, which we're going to dive into, that I think would be really interesting to tease out. So I kind of wanted to start off almost historically. What led you, after a long time working in the kind of corporate world, as you say, media, what led you to take the big dive into being an entrepreneur?
I would say it's a little bit of ignorance plus accident.
I think it has to be a lot of ignorance in being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. For those who came to GGF or our conference in the past, you would have heard my opening speech always evolved around my big, hairy, audacious goal. Actually, I started the first conference when I was working for Business Week, and we had the privilege to work with greenbiz.com in the States. So that's how I got exposed to green business content. And as I dig deeper, I think there are a lot more for us to make change, and also a lot more for us to communicate. So I helped the company to launch the very first green business conference in Tianjin. And it literally went from zero to hero, because we, for Business Week, at the time we never had that kind of conference particularly in China. That was way before people talk about air pollutions, and also we were very pleased that the contents got put into the 5 years plans. Now we joke about it. We said, the reason why China started to think about the sustainability ecosystem in the 5 years plans is because of the Tianjin conference back in 2009. We're very pleased, and especially the last few years, we see how progressive China has turned the green recovery or green agenda big right center for their 5 years plan. And of course, there are a lot of other countries are doing the same. So I think, it's a big encouragement or maybe job satisfactions for me to know that we can make an impact when we put together a conference, and the interests grow more and more. And that led me to go to my company and say, hey, we need to grow the conference, or I'm going to grow it, separately. I think that was also a transition between my old company merging into Bloomberg. So obviously, the topic was very important, close to Bloomberg, and even, the founder, Michael Bloomberg. But I think the focus or the core strength for Bloomberg is really focusing on finance. So, a conference, so broad and covering so many industry, not necessarily is their key focus. So I think we make a very good arrangement that, I decided that I'm going to do it on my own. But my previous employer gave me the full support, continue to be the media partner. So I thought, that's easy. I can continue to run the conference just like before. That led me to mention that, the ignorance part of it, to become an entrepreneur without a brand behind the conference, it makes everything a lot more challenging. But anyway, long story short, we decided that we're going to make the conference as a social enterprise. We registered in Singapore. We part of the impact that we do is not only the content, who we invited to speak and who to participate in the conference, but also we took part of the income, put it back into students program, because we strongly believe that foster future leaders is everyone's responsibility, especially when it comes to company. Even we are a very, very small company. So we decided that we're going to put part of the income and sponsor outstanding youth to some really cool expeditions like the 2041 International Antarctic Expeditions, because we believe that one person get inspired and that person really has the passion and motivations to do something, that person can influence a million. So we call our program 1 to a Million program. The reality is it's proven to be very, very successful, because all the outstanding youth that we sponsor out, now they work in different industry and sectors, and they're making huge impact. I always call the very first young students that we sponsor to Antarctica our poster child, because when he went, he was taking a part-time master's degree program with NUS, and then he came back and made a pledge that he wants to make an impact in the finance industry. So he was hired as the first ESG person for OCBC Bank, and later on moved to DBS, and now he works for AIIB, and he's leading the E and S criteria for the bank before they deploy their investment into Belt and Road infrastructure. So I think without individuals like Tan Chi Wee, for example, it's just really hard for us to stay status quo. So I think what we do essentially, yes, it's about sustainability. Yes, it's about foster future leaders. But I think essentially we are mobilizing a change movement in business, so that we can, and also changing mindsets for young people or even current business leaders to create or reimagine our sustainable future.
Interesting. And I wanted to ask you, because of the space you're in, you almost had two challenges. You had the challenge of starting your own company or growing it as an unknown brand. And at the same time, you had the challenge of being a very early adopter or mover on the sustainability front. And I think people really forget, maybe like if you think about, say, COP21 is when it became very conscious in a lot of people's minds, global movement. But prior to that, you often uphill battles with governments, corporations. So can you tell me, like, which one was harder for you? Kind of shaping a new narrative on sustainability, or actually running your own company? Like, what was more of a challenge?
I think survival is the biggest challenge for us. Like you said, we are the early adopter, or you can say we're very authentic with the ideas and how we wanted to look at social enterprise. I think, now we are talking to a lot of social enterprise and startup. Everybody wants to change the world with a good intention and goodwill. But I think a lot of us are struggling to find a good or standard business model for social enterprise. There are a lot of theory in the market, a lot of books, but when it comes to practice, I think there are still a lot of challenges. We are very fortunate and lucky that we've been around for 7-8 years. We finally, for our social enterprise, we find a very good balanced model to make it self-sustain financially, and also looks like we are on the right path to grow and increase our influence, and also not only to make more money, but also make more impact. I think that's something that we're very proud of. I would say the uphill battle, I mentioned survival, because without running a social enterprise, if we're just focusing on pure consulting services, we can do anything except just pay the bill. And that's not I'm not saying that, I'm not suggesting that that's easy, but I would say that would make our life a lot easier. But because our determinations that we really wanted to having the social enterprise and really want to find a model that works and continue to make impact. And I think the very naive or big, hairy, audacious goal was trying to prove to company or trying to come up with a model that we can do well and do good at the same time. We can't just focusing on do well and making money. I mean, it is very important. So I think how are you going to find a right balance while you're doing well, financially, and yet your business is still, making an impact. So, and also I think being a female entrepreneur is very challenging because in our nature or DNA, we just don't have the gumption to go out and say, oh, we are going to, raise 50 million and we'll be able to exit in 3 years or 5 years and we're going to go IPO. I think it's just not in our nature in general. Of course, I'm stereotyping. I think most female entrepreneur, when we find a purpose in a business, we just wanted to do it and make it happen first. And that also, when your business grow to a new level, and then you will be looking at, is it time for us to fundraise, but we also not very good at blow up our story or inflate our future, paint a rosy picture to investors. So I think, there are skill sets that, we need to acquire as a female entrepreneur. But at the start, I think it's very challenging. So that's also lead me to do a lot of mentorship exercise now, and are trying to help not only female entrepreneur particularly in the sustainability space, but also helping a lot of startup to find, especially social enterprise, trying to help them to find a well-balanced and also a sustainable business model. That's really my passion, because I think going forward, we shouldn't be the minority anymore, because everyone's talking about ESG investing, sustainability investing, and even big and small company looking at ESG practice. So I think it will be not only a growing sector, but I think it will become a norm. And I think, being a first mover in this space, I think we enjoy some advantage, and also we hope that we can be not only the role model, but also a thought leader in this space, that we can share our experience and success and even our failure to make sure that we have more sustainability and ESG practice integrated into big and small businesses.
Interesting. One of the things I pick up from that is you mentioned female entrepreneurs, and one of the things you've done over a bit more recently has been the Eco Game Changer Awards. Can you just kind of tell us a little bit about what was the genesis of kind of doing that and kind of recognizing people and kind of how that links into your general belief about kind of uplifting, especially female entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I need to make a declaration that, I'm not a feminism whatsoever. So I support, and I think it doesn't really matter of male or female, but I think in our sustainability space, there seems to be more female founders than male founders. That's one. And we launched the Women Eco Game Changer Award back 5 years ago, actually. And it's the first one in Asia to give recognitions for women founders who use innovations to create positive social and environmental impact. I think there are a lot of awards for female entrepreneur and also big companies, but there are not enough give recognitions for female entrepreneur in this sustainability space. Like I mentioned earlier, being female entrepreneur is hard, but I think in our space, especially we're talking about 5 years ago in sustainability, it could be even more harder and more challenges. So coming from media, I think we know how to, international media particularly, I think we know how to run award with a high integrity and keep the award in a very high integrity. I'm the one who sell corporate sponsorship and also tables for the events that was pre-COVID. I normally don't know the winners until the actual day. So I think that is, I would say, it makes our award very, very unique. And so over the years, we accumulated, quite a lot of investable projects within our ecosystem. So I think now is also how we can grow our ecosystem and bring in resources to empower these projects to make them even grow bigger or create more impact in society and also in environment. I think that's our goal. I don't really have a crystal ball to say this is my plan, but I work along and I fully support collaboration. We are still small, although we are bigger than when we started, but we still work very closely with a lot of organizations, individuals who share the same vision and missions with us, because we don't believe that there's one country, government, or one company can do it all, or even investor, no matter how big they are. I think that we still need to collaborate, and we need to probably have this spirit to think less about our own success and think more about other people's success. That's also one thing that we always put in our heart. I think we have this slogan and say, the big reason why we are doing what we're doing, because when we see other people succeed, it makes our heart dance. So I think, the connecting part or consulting part or even social enterprise, when we see the students flourish, when we see some startup manage to grow the business, or even big company to make change, it really makes us very, very happy, especially myself and my team. I think that's the big driver for us to do what we're doing.
Okay, fascinating. And I suppose one of the things that I do want to touch on is the thing that everyone's living through right now, which is kind of COVID. So on a company front, but I think then also on a kind of sustainable front, how has COVID impacted your company, and how has COVID, do you think, impacted the dialogue around sustainability?
I must say, last year was very tough for us because a lot of our activities were physical events. So it pushed us to think harder to transform our business model. So now we have a lot of events, just like even this one is online now. So we have our Women Eco Game Changer Award online, and also our youth outreach. We're talking about SDG Open Hackathon. So I was a mentor for the SDG Open Hackathon in Geneva as well as in Beijing with Tsinghua, and they did a fantastic job of transforming the whole SDG Hackathon online. So we are bringing it to Singapore this month, actually, end of this month. So it also gives us the opportunity to learn how to conduct all this exercise online virtually. So that's one. And also, I think on the consulting side, we see there's a surge of demand. Not only we hear or watch on the news on how company or even regulators are asking for more transparency on the ESG practice on company, investors see the return on companies with a good ESG practice, they actually outperform the others during COVID. So I think it gives investor a boost to put their funding more into those companies with ESG practice. So company without ESG practice, now they're thinking harder and not just saying, every year we'll just do the checklist, we'll do the report and that's done. So now they're thinking about what is our strategies and how are we going to make plan and how are we going to communicate with internal and external stakeholders when it comes to ESG and the grand plan that we come up with the next 5 or 10 years. So I think for our consulting business, we also see a surge of demand. I think now is a transition period when companies, they don't even know what questions to ask, because you're talking about change, because I think change in general are causing people a lot of uncomfortness. Not everyone's excited about change, so I think this is a transition period. It still takes a lot of education for companies. Yeah.
On that front, do you want to just quickly explain what ESG means for anyone who doesn't know, who's listening?
Okay, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So that is the, I won't call it regulation, but compliance to a lot of listed company at the moment. But as the appetite for investors in general, let's not talk about impact investor, because impact investing will soon, before we know it, it will become the norm. No one will talk about impact or ESG investing. I think those companies are not in creating impact or with a good ESG practice. I think they will be on the blacklist of non-ethical or brown business. So I think it is becoming a norm that everyone needs to look at what is my plan if I don't have an ESG practice in place. And also I think it highly linked to financial, because in the past, when people look at sustainability, ESG or impact, will say, oh, it's nice to have, or maybe they even look at it as a CSR exercise, which is all good. But now I think there is financial benefits, because banks are looking at companies with good ESG practice in place. Let's not talk about report. Report is only a checklist. Or they are generating impact. They will benefit from getting a cheaper loan, because that will eliminate risk for investor. And also for bigger company, they can look at issuing green bond. So I think there's a financial benefit linked to all we talk about, supposed to be do good, supposed to be doing the right thing, ethical, keeping a transparency of your company governance. I think it is no longer nice to have or just good to have, but it's become a must-have. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your questions.
No, it definitely did. It was actually on the top of my mind, and I actually didn't read the article, but I did see an article this morning or yesterday, which said ESGs are actually harming our move towards a more sustainable future, because they allow a checklist. But I think, obviously, from what you're saying, I think, yes, that has been the case for a certain amount of it, but actually now, because it's becoming so much baked in, so much more embedded, that the expectations go way beyond that, like even just within getting finance and things like that. You can't just be a checklist. You've got to go far beyond that. You've got to have a strategy. You've got to have almost a pillar in place that is actually a fundamental part of your DNA as a company, rather than, like you say, oh yeah, we do sustainability and aren't we good, which is kind of often what it felt like for a few years. But I'll find that article and I'll forward it to you, because it's
yeah. Well, but also let me tell you, there's one thing very is, I would say, a little dirty secret. In the past, whoever in charge of ESG or sustainability in a company, I'm not talking all, but I would say quite a lot of listed company, that they would just get someone to do the ESG reporting, and that could be, when it comes to the boardroom meeting, that will be being discussed in the last 5 minutes. Oh, have we done the report? Yes, anything update, like this year, last year, will just be the same checklist. And often it could be fall under, to all due respects to HR, but, it's just like an HR head will be running that report. It's almost like doing homework. But what I've seen, which is very encouraging, the last 12 months particularly, this role of looking after the sustainability strategies or ESG reporting are given to people who are in charge of finance, or people who are directly report to the CEO, the decision maker. I think that's a huge move for a lot of companies, especially when it happens in a bank. I think that gives us a lot of hope because we know nobody is going to do good if there's no money there. So if like if everything is like tied in with some monetary reward or financials, I think that will motivate people to think ESG or sustainability differently. And more importantly, there's an urgency there. I mean, like COVID is only a wake-up call for us to know that we could live so far apart, but actually we are also very close. And we can consider whether it's COVID or even, climate challenges that is only isolated with one single continent or country. We're all interlinked. We share the same planet. So I think, people do think ESG or sustainability a little bit different. And I would say COVID probably helped the decision maker at least and policy maker to step up and expedite the change process.
Yeah. One thing I did want to talk to you about, because obviously, I mean, me and you are getting old, and we're not the ones that are going to be shaping the future. And what's something that you've been very keen on, you've already spoke about today, which is obviously empowering young people to be the drivers of change in the future. And obviously, my background's communication. So could you just talk to us a little bit about sort of, how almost comms, social media, digital media, all of these different things are actually empowering people to take action, young people, far more than they were ever able to do prior to all of these tools that are available to them.
Right. Well, first of all, I need to correct you. You and I, we're very young.
Okay.
But there are people out there that are younger. I would say, if we just pure talk about sustainability communication or without any substance or plan and strategies in place, that is greenwashing. Unfortunately, there are a lot of companies, they know it is important to communicate with the consumer. That I think that's a new drive for change, forcing company to think about what material you use, how you treat your labor, where the material come from, and your whole supply chain. I think that's good. But I think if company are just trying to entertain pure the consumer so that they can buy more, or just put up a facade on sustainability front so that they can, tapping into all the financial resources that I just mentioned or benefits that I just mentioned, then I think that's pure greenwashing and we have to stop that. However, if we can gel the sustainability communications with a sustainability strategies, I think that's very meaningful because that is transformational. We need to change company, the fundamental mindset and strategies and their so-called long-term plan embedded with the sustainability DNA in it. And then you can talk about the ESG practice. But if you have that without communicating to your consumer or your stakeholders or your investor, matter of fact, then that is going to yield very low return. So I think it should be a holistic approach that we need to communicate with our internal and external stakeholders, well, particularly internal stakeholders. I think there's a huge gap between the management and the internal stakeholders when it comes to ESG practice or why our company need to approach, our future with sustainability DNA. I think that's a big gap internally. If you imagine if you're a bank, you have a sustainability fund, and then you ask your, relationship managers or your private bankers sell it to your client. If they don't understand the fundamental need or why they're doing it, it would just be another product. And then you're going to go out and facing a high net worth individuals or ultra high net worth individuals who look at your two product, which is the conventional, could be REITs, could be oil and gas, versus, your sustainability fund with a bucket of companies with good ESG practice, or maybe with, matter of fact, it could be with a positive impact to social and environmental causes. That may not yield the same return in short run. Then how and all the salespeople have the KPI. They need to meet the number. If they don't understand, they will just go for the easy product. They will only go for the numbers. But if you change the fundamental of these salespeople, I think they would work very hard to convince their client or educate the client and explain to the client to build a sensible portfolio. I'm not saying that investor now have to forego all their financial return benefit, but I think they need to look at a more balanced financial return benefit, because if they don't look after that, they will have to deal with the consequences because we compromise on social and environmental impact to our society. So I think it is very important, and also communication is a key, and working with professionals who understand the essence of sustainability and strategies like yourself, I think it makes a huge difference. Otherwise, it would just be a greenwashing marketing exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting one, because I think there is clear movement now. Like, I think that expectations of just consumers, and especially I think driven by young people more so than older generations, that they have expectations on ethical companies, sustainable companies, even if their company model isn't actually focused in on sustainability, but there is now an expectation that I think there's a authenticity around what people do, so they can't just say they're doing it. However, we still do live in a world where, I mean, I often complain about this, but you can go on LinkedIn and people do updates and just be like, we've just had a panel about sustainability or gender and things like this, and I'm like, you're kind of doing it because you have to. You're not doing it because you should, and it's the right thing to do. And I think we've kind of got to get a little bit away from, on a communications front, using comms just to kind of say, hey, we're doing stuff because we have to. In order for something to be really about the DNA of the company and about kind of proper embedded change, I think it has to go further. So I still think we've got a bit of a way to go on that front. So I have just a couple more questions for you, because I'm mindful of time. First one is just more broadly about sustainability, so not just ESG. Like, what do we need to do as a society in order to make sure, because I mean, there is, if you listen to scientists, if you think about COP, what COP is coming up? COP 24 is coming up soon. And there's going to be a lot of talk around sort of our failure really to sort of get to where we need to be in time. So what does society, governance, and the world need to do in order to kind of start hitting our targets over the next few years?
Wow, it's a very big question. I'm not a Nobel Prize winner, so I don't know if I can answer all your questions. Interesting that you asked that, because I had a conversation with a lawyer yesterday who is also a professor in sustainability, environmental law, and human rights, all sorts. And we had a very broad discussions about the 17 SDG goals. I think it's a very good framework, but I think COVID probably changed the landscape a little bit. So I think we don't take the 17 SDG goals and say, oh, if we can, achieve them all, then we will have a, very good future. I think we'll have a very good future if we all, start embarking some change. Most pressing issue right now, I would say, to deal with COVID, how are we going to mitigate COVID, especially in developing country? I think we need to, I'm not a policymaker, I'm not a government, but I think developed country probably can lend a little bit more help to the developing countries. I'm not talking about pure just vaccine, but I'm talking about the daily basic needs, clean water, food. So I'm very big on, how can we provide clean water solutions to some country. I mean, like, we live in Singapore, we take it for granted. We just say, oh, we wash hands more often. But during COVID, I was asking myself, what about people don't have access to clean water, how are they going to wash their hands more often, right? Let's not talk about masks and the rest of it. So and also I think food distribution and also healthcare support. So I think these are questions that I don't really have an answer myself. Top of my head. We work with startup with solutions, whether it's clean water solutions or alternative food solutions. I think those are very close to my heart because these are the basic needs. How can we help these companies to deploy the solutions faster? It's not about no solutions available. It's a question of like, how can we help them to deploy those solutions faster and going into more countries and not only stay in developed countries. I mean, like there are a lot of alternative food solutions available, but I often question if this is only available for developed countries who can pay more to get access to this alternative food. How good is that? Are we really making impact? Of course, you can argue we lower the carbon footprint, water, what have you, in the process. But I think, if we want to have a sustainable future, we also need to look around us and not just for ourselves that, we can eat healthier. We have the food, alternative protein food available because we can afford to pay more. But I think we need to think broader, bigger. How are we going to help those without the basic, can't even meet the basic needs? And by using these solutions and mobilizing them to get into those people's hand. I think this is, we're not talking about food aids, but we are talking about how can we practically help to solve some of the challenges. I think that will be a broader, bigger topic that should be discussed in COP24. Like I said, I'm not a Nobel Prize economist. I don't know. I don't have the magic wand to make all these things happen. But I think if we all change our mindset to think a little bit different, think a little bit broader, beyond our own territory, I think we will collectively be able to find solution. And funny enough is during COVID, even we can't travel crazy like before, but through technology we seem to get to see more people from different countries. I feel that somehow it becomes borderless. That through Zoom we can host event in the afternoon and we can tapping into audience in Europe. Whereas before we start thinking, if I'm not going to fly to Zurich or Paris, then I won't be able to attend that conference or event. So I think, human beings are very smart. We just need to use our brain. There's one professor always say, use our brain. We just need to use our brain and come up with innovative and creative solutions. We will adapt. Yeah.
Excellent. And I think you answered the question pretty well, even though you said you couldn't. I am going to say, just because I want to make sure for balanced and unbiased purposes, we are definitely not using Zoom because I hate it for many, many reasons. So they get a lot of free press even when you don't use it as a platform. So Riverside, no. I may even cut that part. So yeah, thank you for that. That was a great answer. So I wanted to finish off on very short. If you could give one piece of advice as you are an entrepreneur that's kind of kept with it and like I say, kind of worked in an industry that's taken time for people to get on board. Like, if there's one piece of advice you could give other entrepreneurs who are listening, what would that be?
I would say find something that you really passionate about with a purpose, and that will keep you go along for a long way. Because if no matter what business that you're in, whether it's fintech or medtech or any fancy blockchain business, if this is not something you're so passionate about and you believe in it with a purpose, if you just say, I'm going to start a business to make money, I can guarantee you the chance of failure will be very, very high because you're going to run into challenges, whether it's internal, whether it's external. But you know what? The only thing can keep you going and perseverance during all this challenging time and not give up is because of your passion, because you believe in it, and because there's a purpose. So I think, if you're going to start a business, start something that you're really passionate about and with a purpose. I think that will take you for a long way. Otherwise, it's so easy for any one of us to give up. Giving up is so much easier than perseverance and keep on pushing on and press on. And I don't know if this is a good example, but if you look at some of the very, very successful entrepreneur, I don't think they started off by dreaming we are going to a billionaire. I mean, like Steve Jobs, Jack Ma, I don't question the nature of the business, but I think they all started off with a dream that they want to change the future. They started off with a dream to make, a betterment for humankind. So I think that really drive them. And when they face hurdle and challenges, I think they will be able to pick themselves up and keep going. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Christina. So on that note, I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been incredibly insightful, and I definitely will have you back on the podcast again at some point in the future.
Thank you.
Of course. And I want to thank you everyone for listening. I hope you learned a lot today. And please do check out GGC, Global Green Connect, because they are a fantastic company doing fantastic things. So take care and thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.